Good morning, beloved. Good morning, and welcome to Bridgewater Church of the Brethren. Whether you are joining us on YouTube or from your home at the Bridgewater Retirement Community, or from right here in this very room, together we are an inclusive family of faith, seeking to follow Jesus and live out the love of God. My name is Jennifer Keeney Scar, and on behalf of your pastors, Aaron Dalrymple, David Miller, and myself, it is so good to see you this morning. As we get started today, I have many wonderful things to share with you, so buckle up and get ready. First off, this month of June is Pride Month, during which we take the opportunity to celebrate the many expressions of God's image in the siblings around us. And there are multiple events and opportunities to gather around Pride in the city of Harrisonburg. So if you are interested, I invite you to Google Pride Events Harrisonburg, Virginia, and see a list of opportunities that might interest you. Shenandoah Valley Choral Society, directed by our own Curtis Nolly, and Harrisonburg Rockingham County Band, directed by Melissa Harper, are presenting a patriotic concert called Celebrate America, which will take place Saturday, July 2nd, at 7:30 p.m. at Harrisonburg High School. For information about tickets, I encourage you to look into the insert in your bulletin. Today, your lunch has been, or is currently being, lovingly prepared for you by our fantastic youth group and their leaders. And you are all invited to join us following worship this morning to enjoy some salad, spaghetti, and garlic bread. It's gonna be very delicious. All donations collected for this meal go toward the support of our youth program, and donations are welcome whether or not you are able to stay with us today. The Mission and Service Commission here at church has organized 3 garden work days over the course of our summer together, the first of which was supposed to take place this Tuesday, June 21st. But as we paused and reconsidered the time of our volunteers and how much work still needs to be done at the CELC this week, we decided to postpone our garden work day a week to help give space for our volunteers to participate in both if they'd like. So our first garden work day will be June 28th, just a 1-week delay. And fresh sign-up sheets are at the hospitality desk and online in the link in the email that went out on Friday. Next Sunday, June 26th, is Youth Sunday, and that'll be at 8:30 a.m. service and here in 11 o'clock. And I had the opportunity to speak with some of our youth last week about their plans, and let me share with you just a little secret. It's gonna be awesome. So I hope you all come. It's gonna be great. And then following worship next week, our deacons are sponsoring the Dementia Friends training, facilitated by Kathy Geisweit. A light lunch will be provided to attendees, and folks are encouraged to sign up either at the hospitality desk, there's a sign-up sheet there, or online at the link provided in the bulletin board email. And finally, a warm thank you to each and every one of you who faithfully contributes financially to the life and ministry here at Bridgewater Church of the Brethren. The work we do wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All offerings in any amount are welcomed into our offering plates stationed around the sanctuary or given online through our giving portal on our church website. And with that note of gratitude, we arrive into the presence of God and one another. Welcome, beloved, to worship.
Good morning. Rise as you're able for the call to worship. With friends and strangers, with family and neighbors, we gather. With faith reaching out to touch, with hearts straining to trust, we hope. With word and wonder, with silence and song, we wait.
I'd like to invite any children that we have to join me right over here. Good morning, Eleanors. How are you all this morning? Good. I have something to show you. What is this? Now hold it up. It's a Band-Aid. What do I do with this?
Put it somewhere where you're bleeding.
Put it somewhere where I'm bleeding. Right, so if I'm hurt, this will come in handy, right? And this is an extra big one, so I could get hurt really badly and it would be okay. What about if my feelings are hurt? Do I use this?
You can use it to wipe your tears.
I could use it to wipe my tears. That's great. Yeah, that could be helpful. But this isn't going to do a whole lot, right? If I'm feeling sad, I could still wipe my tears, but it's probably not going to be of much else use to me. What could I do? Do you have any ideas? If my feelings were hurt, what do you think I could do? What do you think?
Talk to someone about it.
I could talk to someone about it.
You could cuddle up in your bed and snuggle your toy.
I could cuddle up in my bed and snuggle my toy. That's a great idea. I could hug somebody. Hug somebody that you trust. Those are great answers. So this morning, we are talking about times when Jesus healed people who are hurting. One of the things that Jesus did was let people know that they weren't alone. And that's some of the things you all already said, to find people that can help you when you're hurting. When you're feeling sad or angry, it helps to know that there are people around you that love you and care about you, right? And what can they do to help us? They can't put a Band-Aid on our hurt feelings, but they can help us with words and hugs and snuggles. They could put a Band-Aid on my mouth. I don't know how that would be helpful to get me to stop crying. But they let us know that we're not alone, and that's usually very helpful. So today is Father's Day, and last month we celebrated Mother's Day. And these days are about saying thank you to the people in our lives that help us and take care of us. Because a lot of times, especially when we're kids, those people that we go to can be our fathers or our mothers, or sometimes it might be a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt or a friend, somebody that we can go to. And these people are adults that care for us and help us when we're hurting. And Jesus certainly did that, and he was able to perform miracles, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the sermon this morning. But he could heal people. We know that you and I don't really have the power to perform miracles, but can you think of a way that you could help somebody who was hurting, help them feel a little bit better, help to heal them?
Well, maybe they could let you watch something that you like, even though they don't like it.
That's a great idea. So you could share, you could be with them and let them do something that maybe you're not really that excited about doing, but you know that it would make them feel better if that's what you did.
Ask them what something would help them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, you can ask them if
Candy.
give them candy, ask them what will help to make them feel better. That's right. You guys have great ideas. So take them to the park. What I have for you all this morning is a little healing kit. And it's not much, but there are some Band-Aids. There's some candy, some suckers that you could share, some stickers. So this could be a healing kit for a time that maybe you're not feeling so good and need some cheering up, or it could also be something you could use to share with somebody else.
Or maybe if you're bored, you can just have a
Or if you're bored, you could have a lollipop. That's exactly right. So will you join me and let's say a little prayer, and then I'll give you a healing kit to take with you. Dear God, we know that sometimes we feel sad or angry or frustrated, and it's hard when we have these feelings. But during these times, help us remember that we have people we can go to for help. Today, especially, we want to say thank you for giving us those people in our lives that help us when we're hurting. But God, we also want your help in guiding us to be healers too. When we see someone who's hurting, help us know the right way to help. Amen. All right, and I have plenty of these, so if you all want to take two, go for it.
This morning I'm going to read a poem from a book by Jan Richardson, The Healing That Comes. This is a blessing for solace. I know how long you have been waiting for your story to take a different turn, how far you have gone in search of what will mend you and make you whole. I bear no remedy, no cure, no miracle for the easing of your pain. But I know the medicine that lives in a story that has been broken open. I know the healing that comes in ceasing to hide ourselves away with fingers clutched around the fragments we think are none but ours. See how they fit together, these shards we have been carrying? How in their meeting they make a way we could not find alone.
Good morning. I'm also reading a poem, Blessing for Hope, entitled Blessing for a Whole Heart by Jan Richardson. You think if you could just imagine it, that would be a beginning. That if you could envision what it would look like, that would be a step toward a heart made whole. This blessing is for when you cannot imagine. This is for when it is difficult to dream of what could lie beyond the fracture, the rupture, the cleaving through, which has become a life you do not recognize as your own. When all that habits you feels foreign, your heart made strange and beating a broken and unfamiliar song, let there come a word of hope, a voice that speaks into the shattering, reminding you that who you are is here, every shard, somehow holding the whole of you that you cannot see, but is taking shape even now, every part of you coming together in an ancient, remembered rhythm that bears you not towards restoration, not toward return, as if you could somehow become unchanged, but steadily deeper into the heart of the one who has already dreamed you complete.
In listening to our choir this morning, which great anthem, friends, and listening to the blessings we've just heard and the songs we've sung, I'm reminded that our lives are baskets of joy and sorrow. We hold these things together, sometimes even in the course of 5 minutes, and that is represented here this morning. And I'm grateful for that, for the grace of our God is present in life's joys and in life's sorrows and struggles. And that is the God we come before in prayer. And so if you haven't already, I invite you to allow your body to soften and relax into this time. Maybe let those shoulders drop away from your ears. Ease the furrowed brow you're carrying with you. Relax your jaw. See if your hands want to clasp together or somehow fold in that ancient sign of prayer. Fill up your belly with a big and beautiful breath. Our God is near. As I name a few beloveds and situations on behalf of our community this morning, I invite you to hold each one in love, whatever that means to you. We begin with the celebration of Lucille Vaughn's 101st birthday, which we gathered for yesterday. A beautiful time of conversation, delicious cake, and marvelous company, celebrating just a wonderful person. And Lucille, if you're watching with us this morning, today is your birthday. Happy birthday. We love you. We give thanks that Chester Bowman has been released from the hospital and is currently in Serenity House for rehab. We hold close in prayer Steve Keplinger, who was hospitalized this past week with pneumonia. He has since been transferred to a wellness house at the BRC. And we also remember his spouse, Nancy, who has served as a support and a caregiver to Steve. As Pastor Aaron mentioned, today is Father's Day. And so we lift up all the men who nurture and strengthen us, whether they are conventional or unconventional fathers, brothers, cousins, friends, neighbors, who speak life over us day in and day out. Thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. We also acknowledge those for whom this day is tender or full of grief or fraught with all kinds of complicated emotions. We see you. God sees you, and you are not alone. This weekend is also the celebration of Juneteenth. This is a day of jubilee celebrating the long overdue emancipation of enslaved African Americans. This celebration originated in Galveston, Texas, when word finally arrived of President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation nearly 2 years after it was established. And while Juneteenth is a very recent federal holiday, it has a long history of celebration in our country. And if you're unfamiliar with it, and maybe even if you're familiar, I highly encourage you to spend some time Googling it today. You'll learn some cool things. We also continue to lift up the Shenandoah District and its leadership. We lift up the conversations still developing between us, and we remember that this relationship between us is long. It is full of joyful collaboration and deep, complex pain. We all need ears to listen, hearts that remain true to our calling, and willing imaginations guided by the Spirit toward a better day. Having spoken all these things aloud between us, we now entrust them to our God, who already knows, already loves, and already heals. I invite you to join me in singing the first verse of O Healing River. Our prayer this morning is based on one written by Sarah Bessey in her book, A Rhythm of Prayer. O God of rivers and heartbreak, teach us to love the world again. Teach us to love the world extravagantly, knowing that it will, break our hearts. Teach us that loving this world is still worth it. God of pandemics and suffering ones, God of Juneteenth and finally liberated ones, God of every brilliant, broken, lost, present, or absent parent, teach us to love the world again. God of loneliness and belonging, God of campfires and s'mores, of sirens and presents, of freshly built playgrounds and tomatoes ready for harvest, teach us to love the world again. O God of the healing that comes, God of our whole heart, teach us to love this world that you love again. Amen.
This morning's gospel reading will be from Mark chapter 5, verses 21 through 43. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him. And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately, her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you? How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside, and he took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
How many times do you begin a conversation with, "How are you?" I admit that I think I begin nearly every conversation I have with this same question. But then this week I started wondering, do I even hear the answer when I ask this question? Do I want the answer? Is this merely a pleasantry that I need to check off before I can get to the real reason for our conversation? Is this a question that I would use if I wanted to start a deep, meaningful, courageous conversation? Over the course of 4 different Sundays this summer, we are exploring 4 questions that could begin courageous conversations. By courageous conversations, I mean conversations that go beyond a surface-level pleasantry and seek to build a deeper understanding, as well as compassion and empathy for one another. Last week, Pastor David gave a powerful testimony about courageous conversations that could begin with the question, "Where are you from?" This morning, I invite you to consider the ways we could communicate as a beloved community by asking the question, where does it hurt? What can we learn when we acknowledge and empathize with the pain of others? In the gospel text from Mark, we heard the stories of pain of two women. We've not spent a lot of time in the Gospel of Mark, but it is known for its vivid and engaging storytelling, and our text for this morning is no exception. In the verses that we just heard, the writer of the gospel dramatically weaves together these two stories that have both notable similarities and stark contrasts. In today's text, Jesus finds himself in the midst of a great crowd. The leader of a local synagogue named Jairus runs up to Jesus, falls to his feet, and begs for Jesus' help. His young daughter, he tells Jesus, is near death. So Jesus agrees to go with him, and together they push their way through this massive crowd. But as they're moving slowly forward, a woman, hidden amongst the crowd, comes up behind Jesus and touches his cloak. This woman, who is not named in the gospel, has been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. But she's heard of the healing power of Jesus, and she's convinced that if she could just reach out and touch this great man's clothes, she could be healed. So she reaches forth and she touches his cloak. Jesus doesn't see her, but he feels that this healing has occurred, so he questions the crowd, "Who touched my clothes?" The woman, knowing what happened, comes to Jesus, trembling, terrified, and admits the truth. But rather than scorn her, Jesus says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Now, while all this is happening, we're left in suspense about poor Jairus' young daughter who lays dying. The family has sent out word, "The child's already dead. Don't bother coming." But Jesus tells Jairus, "Do not fear, only believe." When they reach the house, they are again told, "The girl is dead." But Jesus says she's only sleeping. Everyone around laughs. They've seen the girl die. He hasn't even been here. How can he say she's just sleeping? But Jesus takes Jairus and the child's mother, and he goes to her side. He takes the girl by the hand and tells her to get up. And immediately she gets up and walks around. She's alive. I'm curious as to why the writer puts these stories together in this way. Is it for dramatic emphasis, suspense, while we wait to see if Jesus can heal this dying girl? Maybe it's because the stories share some commonalities. They both feature suffering females. The number 12 is used in both stories. The girl is 12 years old. The woman has been hemorrhaging for 12 years. Both use the term daughter. Jairus' daughter, and Jesus calls the woman daughter. And both stories focus on the power of faith. The faith of the hemorrhaging woman brings her healing, and Jesus calls Jairus to have faith that his daughter's life can be saved. But I was most drawn to the stark contrasts in these stories. The young, dying girl is introduced to us in the context of her family's social position. It's made clear she is the daughter of a local leader. Her father has sought out Jesus. He needs to make sure that Jesus knows her story. So he runs right up to him head on and asks Jesus for help. But Jesus' journey to help this girl is interrupted by a different unnamed woman. This woman is introduced with no familial context, nothing to allude to any sort of social status. What we can interpret from the text is that she likely would have been excluded from the community. She was considered unclean, having bled for 12 years. She spent all of her money, everything she owned, on doctors, hoping for a cure, only to be let down over and over again. She is very intentionally hiding in the crowd. Both women are suffering, but Jairus comes right up to Jesus, speaks to his face. This woman approaches Jesus from behind, very careful not to be seen. This contrast really hit home for me, and it immediately brought to mind people sitting right here in our church and in faith communities around the world. Some can come right in, walking confidently through the front doors. They can speak to their priests, their pastors, their rabbis, their imams, and tell them their prayers, their concerns, and their needs. They can sit comfortably in the pews and worship in safety and security. But some are not as confident. They come more hesitantly through the doors. They look for seats where they won't be quite as visible, less likely to be seen. They avoid talking to anyone. Many carry wounds that aren't easily talked about in public settings. They sit awkwardly in the pews and worship in fear and insecurity, wondering, is this where I belong? I'd like to share with you a short piece that I wrote. I was inspired to write this after reading a blog post titled, "Dear Couple in the Pew, I See You," by Laura Kelly Fanucci. Fanucci's blog post reminded me of my own feelings and experiences of carrying hidden wounds. And my piece is titled, "Dear People in My Church, I See You. Do you see me?" from the person in the back pew. Dear people in my church, I see you. Do you see me? I'm here. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm here. I felt something this morning that told me I needed to be here. I wasn't sure, but I listened, and I'm here. I made sure not to be too early so I wouldn't be part of the big crowd coming in. I waited in my car until the last possible minute, and then I kept my head down and slipped into the back pew. I made sure to sit far enough away from anyone so they wouldn't feel like they had to acknowledge me. As the organ plays the final notes of the introductory music, I carefully read my bulletin, not really reading the words, but mostly just finding a way to keep my head down. The service starts, and I raise my head. Now it's safe to listen. Everyone's focus is on the front. No one will notice me. I blend in. I put on nice clothes. I did my hair. I look like I have everything together. I look like I belong. I look around. I see a couple in front of me with young children. One has their arm around the other's shoulder, and a child nestles close by. The other children are occupied with coloring books and puzzle games. A perfect family, I think to myself. Why can't I have that? My eyes wander to another family and another after that. I'm supposed to be listening to the speaker, but instead, I just can't seem to focus. I'm falling apart. No matter what I do, I can't hold it together. I feel like I'm breaking. My heart is bleeding. My wounds are so deep, so exposed. I just thought that if I could come here, if I could reach out and touch the Spirit, maybe I could be healed. But now I look around and I feel unworthy. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe they don't want someone like me, someone broken. Everyone has someone, but I don't. They probably don't want to hear my story. Stories like mine make people feel uncomfortable. Stories like mine aren't supposed to be talked about out loud. You keep things like that to yourself. I try to snap myself out of it. Stop it. You came here to listen, so listen. I make myself listen to the preacher. They're preaching about Jesus. Jesus who went to those messy places. Jesus who healed the sick, the dying, the suffering, the wounded. Jesus who showed love to everyone he met, no exceptions. I start to cry. Why do I always have to cry? Stop it. Stop crying. People are definitely going to look at me now. Wipe the tears away. Keep your head down. Be invisible. I wish it were invisible. But I also wish you could see me. I just want to reach my hand out and have someone take that hand, pull me in close, wrap their arms around me, hold me, heal me. The final hymn, it's almost over. Soon I can run away, run back to my car, and let the tears come as they will. But maybe someone will stop me. Maybe someone will talk to me. What would I even say? I'm here. From the person in the back pew. Sometimes we can run to Jesus full on, like Jairus, and tell him our pain and ask to be healed. But there are some wounds that are different. We can't talk about them. Some wounds are supposed to be kept private. Divorce, abuse, addiction, infertility, just to name a few. Wounds that make us unclean in social settings. The passage from Mark says the woman was suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years, but we can't even openly name what she suffered from. She likely suffered from a condition in her uterus that caused 12 years of vaginal bleeding. Can you imagine the physical pain and discomfort she must have felt 12 years? But then to not even be able to name the pain, the shame that she must have felt. On top of that, she suffered at the hands of incompetent doctors who took her money and did not heal her. She's been forced to use up all of her financial resources, everything she owns. She's unclean, untouchable, excluded from society, desperate for health and restoration to a normal life. But she can't run up to Jesus. She can't tell him her pain. She has to sneak up from behind to blend into the crowd, trying so hard not to be seen. She is so desperate that she thinks if she can just touch his cloak, just let her fingers graze the cloth that he wore, she could be healed. She manages to reach him, to touch him, and her physical suffering ends. But Jesus felt the healing happen. He knew what had happened, but he didn't know who it was. It troubled me. Why does he call her out? Why ask, who touched my clothes? This woman is clearly terrified to be seen. What will happen to her if this crowd finds out that she dared to touch this man, to steal some of his healing power? Why does Jesus expose her in this way? He does this because what she has done needs to be exposed to the crowd, not because what she has done is wrong, but because what she has done is right. Jesus does not want to draw attention to her uncleanliness. He does not want to shame her. He wants the crowd to see her faith in healing. Daughter, he says, your faith has made you well. Her faith made the difference, not her physical contact with Jesus. Her faith healed her. Jesus wants the crowd to see her, to celebrate her extraordinary faith. Go in peace, he says. Go into a new life, a life not defined by hopelessness, but one defined by fullness in the peace of God's healing power. So to the person in the back pew, we see you. You are here. Your faith brought you here, and your faith can make you well. Just reach out your hand to the people in the church. Look for that outstretched hand. See one another. Don't be afraid to ask, where does it hurt? We will not expose you. We will not shame you. Your faith will make the difference, but reach your hand out anyway so we can hold it and walk with you in your journey. The words we heard from Jan Richardson earlier in her blessing, the healing that comes, remind us that healing can come in ceasing to hide ourselves away with fingers clutched around the fragments we think are none but ours. Healing can come when we decide not to hide, and also when others decide to see us where we are. There is not one cure, one magical moment of healing. Even in the story from Mark, the woman was healed physically, but the story spoke of so many other wounds. Her loss of money and resources to doctors, her exile from society. We can assume losses of friends and family and other loved ones who cast her aside. These wounds do not heal so easily. Healing is a process. Each piece of you that makes up the whole you is there, is a part of you. The pieces change. They bear the wounds we carry. They make us who we are. Healing does not mean we return to the person we were before. It means that we can learn to love all the pieces because they make up a whole person who is loved by God. Where does it hurt? We want to know. We want to know the whole you. We celebrate the extraordinary faith that brought you here and the faith that can make you whole. So go in peace and be healed. In the spirit of Christ's love among us, we see you. May it be so. Loving God, open our eyes that we may truly see one another. Open our ears that we may compassionately listen to one another. Open our arms that we may hold one another in a loving embrace. Open our hearts that we may love without bounds. Go in peace and be healed. Amen.